Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order Tuesday, January 24th, 2023 at approximately 7:03 p.m. Melissa, can you please take the roll call?
Yes. Carl Hubner.
Here.
Jason Giard.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Megan Malcolm. Here. Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
Pinkerton Student Liaison Shannon Caffell.
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools Bob Thompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
If we can all stand, do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. All right. Board members, you have meeting minutes in your packets. We have 4 sets from December 13th regular meeting, December 23rd special meeting, January 10th public hearing, and then the January 10th special meeting. You can take a few minutes to look those over.
Do we want to do this all, can we do it all in one motion?
You certainly can.
I would make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from December 13th regular meeting, December 23rd special meeting, January 10th public hearing, and January 10th special meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on any of the minutes? All right, then all approved. Rajan? All right. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Melissa, do we have any public comments?
There are none tonight.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to school highlights. First up is Dr. Cheney for HCS.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a little while since we've had an opportunity to give you an HCS update. So you will hear me talk about some events that happened back in November and December, but that we're still really excited about. One of those things was that in November, our 4th graders concluded their study of state government with a field trip to the New Hampshire State House and the State History Museum. The students had an opportunity to look at the legislative chambers, tour the House, even debate a mock bill. And then at the end of their visit, Governor Sununu came out to say hello, and all of the chaperones spoke to what a wonderful representation of Hampstead our students were, how polite and well-behaved they were, and how much they enjoyed it as well. The We Deliver Hampstead Central School Post Office is up and running again. That is our in-house post office where students can pen letters to each other, to staff. We even have parents that will drop off a letter to their students from time to time. So I want to make sure I say a big thank you to Mrs. Heather Sears, who is running our program this year. She collaborated with the East Hampstead Post Office to bring in the postmaster and the assistant postmaster, who came to one of our assemblies and swore in our new 4th grade postal workers. Each classroom gets a turn every week, so about once a month each classroom has a turn, and the kids had to apply to be the various positions, and they love delivering mail, getting mail, and sharing mail. It really not only is a fun activity, but it gives them a purpose for writing. So, we encourage folks to use our internal post office. We had a visit this December from Kevin Skarupa from WMUR. He came over to kick off our 3rd grade weather unit with our students. One of the best facts that the kids learned was that a rainbow is actually in the shape of a circle. We only ever see half of it when we're looking out, but if you look at it from up above, it's actually in the shape of a circle, which the kids were so excited about, and he taught them how to do it with the hose in the summertime. So, 3rd grade families, if your kiddos are out there with the hose, they're doing science. It's okay. Also in our 3rd grade, the Greater Salem Rotary Club came to HCS to deliver dictionaries to each 3rd grade student. This is a long-standing tradition of the Rotary, providing our students with these resources. And it was so fun to see students who have older brothers and sisters just so excited that they finally got their dictionary. They take these home, and one of the best features is that they're actually student dictionaries. So beyond just having a command of the English language, they have various resources in the back, such as, measurement tables, a times table, and every child's favorite, the longest word in the English language, which takes up an entire page. It's a science word, and it would take us all night if I tried to pronounce it, but it is a highlight for our students. Our students are going to go down in history. They participated in the World Cup Stacking Championship and were part of the largest group of students to ever cup stack at the same time across the world. So they have a nice little certificate, and they feel really proud of that. Cup stacking, if you've never participated, is a two-handed activity which integrates the left and right brain hemispheres, and so it's more than just fun and more than just a physical activity, but it actually supports their brain development. And it's a unit that Mrs. Arroyo and Mrs. Ingraham do in their class each year. So we like to have a little fun at HCS as well, and this year we were pleased to bring back Cliff West with his Polar Express opportunity for our kindergarten students. December 7th, our kindergartners put on their best pajamas. They got their golden tickets to board the train to the North Pole, and Cliff read the story and took them on a really magical adventure. Hot chocolate was donated by Honeydew, and the kids and adults, frankly, had a really magical experience. Finally, we had the 4th grade concert and art show this December. Our students sang songs about peace and celebration. What was really cool was seeing many of the staff members that had seen the presentation during the day come back at night. And, they said that they were so moved by a couple of the songs, and just the idea of bringing children in our community back together in song was so powerful that they joined us again. So a thank you to Mrs. Stark and Mr. Torelli for a wonderful event. Oh, and sorry, last but not least, we are right now in the throes of our gymnastics unit at school. We've got the balance beam out and the pommel horse and the vault. Once in a while, I might go down and take a cartwheel if I have the time. But the kids really love this. It's sort of a break from that more traditional sport-based, physical running type of exercise and more of a strength-based piece. So we see other kids shining in different ways. So, we're glad to be back here in 2023 with the meat of our school year ahead of us and ready to go. Do you have any questions?
Board members?
Nope, no questions.
No. Thank you. That's a great update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Highlight of the night. Shannon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
All right. First off, I'd just like you all to know we're in the presence of a celebrity right now. Dr. Powers, if you didn't see him, he was on the news the other night for his snow day announcement. That was the highlight of my week. So we were all a little thrown off with the snow, but there's more to come this week, and it's midterms. Woohoo! Midterms will continue over to next Monday due to the snow, with Friday still being a teacher workshop day. On that Friday, incoming freshmen will visit Pinkerton and explore the campus and see what the different departments have to offer. I'm very excited to be performing with the Dance 2 company. The Air Force JROTC drill team won first again at their second meet. That was way back December 10th, but we still gotta celebrate. Course selection for next year will be taking place on Aspen between January 31st and February 10th. So make sure you get your recommendations in there when the time comes and talk to your teachers. There is a student versus faculty volleyball tournament. I'm not quite sure on the dates, but I will get back to you on that. The New Hampshire Scholastic Arts Awards were announced, and 23 students from Pinkerton were recognized. And the statewide exhibit is in the lobby of the Stockbridge Theater until February 5th.
Yep.
If you want to watch some sports teams, Pinkerton athletes have some sort of meet or game almost every day. There's plenty to watch, and all the teams are doing very well. I'll keep you updated with playoffs and all of that. And just some events for the future. Student Council is hosting a Northern Lights themed dance on February 11th. And Milli Vanilli is back this year, Pinkerton's lip syncing contest. And that will be the evening of February 15th. I'm very excited to go see it.
That's awesome. Any questions for Shannon? All right. Typically, you take off right about now, so we don't keep you up at night, so you're fresh for school. But you might want to stick around for at least the next 15 minutes for our new star in town.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you, Shannon. All right. We're going to move on to current business. Tonight we do have a star in our midst. We've asked Mr. Powers if he would come to Hempstead and give an overview of what's going on at Pinkerton and allow time for the board members and others to ask some questions. So, Mr. Powers, if you wouldn't mind. So, Dr. Powers.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak with you in that. And tough act to follow. Shannon covered, I think, about 90% of the things that I was going to talk about in that. But I'm not surprised because I know she's always on top of everything that's going on. It was my daughter. Me getting in front of cameras or anything like that, it's not my style or what I'd like to do. And it was the Bills Bengals playing, and I just wanted to watch the football game. And she's like, "Dad, you can't do that. You know you're making a call. Like, you gotta try something different." So. The challenge is on, Mr. Thompson. Bob,
You make for a good opening act, Dr. Powers. Just wait,
so
just wait.
to
We're
see
in
what
production
you're-
right now.
Yes, wait to see what you have, and then maybe someday there'll be a duet.
I will take you up on that.
Yes, as long as we can just rap and not actually have to sing and hit some
That's right.
melody of that, we'll be all right. But there's a lot going on. So as Shannon said, we're in the midst of exams this week, so unfortunately, the snow dates did throw a little bit of a wrench. Things get pushed into next week like that, and it was great to have a traditional snow day. We do have to make it up in June. Exams will get kicked into next week. We'll see what the weather later this week brings in that. But we have a professional learning day on Friday, which is exciting in that all incoming freshmen, so your current 8th graders, will be on campus to learn about different classes and different opportunities for them. And on Thursday night, we have our course night, so all 8th graders and their families can come as well to learn about not only the courses for next year, but beyond that. So part of what we try to do and talk with all of our students, especially now in the flex period, is looking down the road as to what classes that you want to take. So currently the flex group that I have is freshmen, so part of the conversations that we've been having in there is like, look at the course catalog and what do you want to take your junior and senior year, and then let's make sure that you're signing up for the right courses your sophomore year so that you can have those opportunities your junior and senior year. So there's lots of conversations that go along with that. Specifically with some of the Hampstead students, I think it's unique, and for me, I would get asked how are students from Hampstead or from this town and that, and I always have to pause for a minute because for me, I think of them they're Pinkerton students, and I think one of the great parts of seeing them all come together and when they're on campus that there really is no way of telling which town they're from outside of when they wear a sweatshirt or something from when they were in middle school or that. But diving into some of the data in that, the Hampstead students do very well. You should be very proud of the K-8 coming through, what's offered and what they take advantage of, and it's very clear and evident in what they do while they're at Pinkerton. The success is both inside and outside of the classroom. So academically, socially, on the athletic teams, on the dance stage, in theater and all that, they're touching every part of our community in events and everything at Pinkerton, and they're very successful. So I think that the collaboration that we've been working on and emphasizing over the past several years, and that in particular working with Bob recently here and Nicole and others, that it's been great to see a lot of that vertical alignment in working with those students and seeing their continued successes, not only when they get to us and then beyond when they graduate high school, where they go after that. So there's a lot to be proud of from the students from Hampstead. I didn't have any specific topics, anything else, so I thought maybe it would be a good chance to have a little dialogue if there were any questions or any things that you want a little bit more information about, can elaborate on or share.
I know I've got a few, but Board members? Wanna start?
I have just hoping you can maybe have some clarification just for some of the Pinkerton parents that are at home. Both of my kids are at Pinkerton. Could you clarify what's going on with the 8-day attendance issue that's sort of happening? I think there's been some miscommunication where some kids thought that if they had a note or an excused absence, that it wasn't going to be a problem for them, and then it kind of seems like towards the end of the semester it went a little
Yeah, there was a little
haywire.
bit of, I think there was some miscommunication, misunderstandings as going through at the beginning, and then it caught up here at the, the end of the semester, because of going semesters instead of quarters, not having that catch point in the middle. It really is where it came up in that, and part of it's just with them missing time is getting them to make sure that they're getting the time and the connection, especially in the classes that they're missing, so that they're prepared for the exams that are going on this week, getting that material and that information. Because a lot of what we've seen coming out of the pandemic was high absenteeism. And obviously during the pandemic, we did everything we can just to connect and get students to come. So a lot of like the attendance policies and things like that went by the wayside and were waived. So now coming back out of it, what are some attendance policies to get and make sure that we have students that are attending? So part of it, I think, is that little bit of a swing from one end to the other, and making sure that we share and get that information out about the process and that with it.
Okay, yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that that was kind of clarified, because I know that
Yes.
that was something that was going back and forth, and, personally, I am probably more inclined to keep my child home now if they have some sort of a cold, where before I might have been like, yeah, you just have sniffle, go to school. So I just wanted to clarify.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, no, that's definitely, it's, because it's used to be, you just got the sniffles, go to school, you're fine.
Right.
And now, who knows what that is, so there is a tendency to keep them home and that,
Yeah.
so, yeah, part of it's how do we find that new balance in that, so, yes, we'll definitely work on that communication aspect, so, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So I'll start with a couple of my questions. This year we saw probably, at least since I've been on the board and before, the largest increase from Pinkerton. I think it was somewhere 9%. Was that where we landed?
it
What
was
was the
8.
percent that we landed?
It was
I think it was
8.
8.
8? Okay, 8%. How can we get a line of sight to that earlier in the process? I mean, we got good communication, not saying we didn't, but,
Right.
planning that 8%, helps. And then can you also talk to the board and the parents at home? What is driving that? Where do you see why it went up that much?
Yeah. Sure. So on our website, there's a bigger narrative about the budget and the increase for next year. So I think if anyone wants to read through that and if they have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer to that. But in a nutshell, there are two big drivers. One of them was the enrollment. So year over year, the enrollment going down for next year was one of the drivers for it. And then the inflation that we were facing, those increases. So part of it was coming after our budget, the current year that we're in, when we had set it there, a lot of the inflation started after that. So part of this budget was capturing that inflation in the next budget, because the prices had just gone up by so much there. So between some of the, the energy costs and that, but then also labor costs as well. Looking at those pieces there and making sure that we're remaining competitive with our faculty and staff in paying them to retain them, because we don't want to be losing the great people that we have, because we know that plays a huge role and a huge piece into what is provided for them. So it's definitely a challenge, and we try to get as much information to you as early as possible with that, because we start working on our budget in the summertime and going through that, and in the fall to have it finalized in the November board meeting with that. So I think what we did this past year, try to give an early indicator of where we were at the fall standing town dinner, and we were double digits looking at that point in time.
Right.
And continued to work on it to get it down lower in that.
Okay.
So I think we'll just continue trying to have as much open lines of communication as far as that's concerned, and making sure, like, if we're experiencing anything like that again, telling you that this is what we're seeing and we're hitting, but obviously trying to get it as as low as possible without cutting into the programs in the sense of taking away from the student opportunities with that.
Okay. And with the student population, what do you see in the out years coming up for Pinkerton?
The enrollment's going down over the next few years, not as significant as it has been the last couple of years, but we're still seeing a decrease. So the decrease is starting to slow a little bit over the next handful of years before it rises back up again. So we are going to see a little bit more of a downward trend, then we'll see that enrollment bounce back up a little bit slowly at first, but then creep back up over the 3,000, get to the 3,100 there. So part of what we're trying to factor in now too is seeing coming out of the pandemic, how has that shifted and what's that effect going to be on the projections that we've had in the past. So as at every year that we get a little bit further away from it, where I think we're going to get to a little bit more of, okay, where are people are moving or staying, has that changed some of that stuff there?
Yep.
And then the other thing we're doing is we're just looking at, making it known that people can attend Pinkerton. So how do we ideally look to stabilize that enrollment? Because if the closest we can get to stabilizing year over year definitely helps with the budget, then that can help with any spikes or dips with it. So try to minimize that aspect of it.
Okay. Is there any investments that you're looking to push off a bit as far as like in buildings or additions, anything like that, to help to mitigate the cost increase?
Yeah, so we definitely look within our capital budget and look at different projects that are there and defer them to future years whenever we can. So we've had, whether it's boilers or paving or updating signage and things across campus like that. Then if it's not something we absolutely have to do right now, if we can push it down the road, then push it down the road. But also be mindful we don't want to push it too far down the road.
Right.
That way we're stuck in a year and all of a sudden now we have all these projects that we have to do, and then it causes a spike just on that. So trying to make it as smooth as possible with regard to that.
All right. And the reason why is because we've talked here that Hampstead's population is not decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
We're either, at least the high school in the next few years, we're either flat or we are increasing. So by default, we're going to be paying more because we're sending the same or more versus other towns that are sending less. So we're going to see our percent increase a bit more.
Right.
So that's why I'm curious, because it's, bringing in 8% to our, budget takes a little bit of a hit. So.
Yeah, it does, and we understand that, and I mean that was one where we agonized over it, and it's 8% tuition. Budget-wise, I think we were just over about 5% for our operating budget year over year. So trying to minimize as much increase there,
Right.
knowing that denominator,
Yeah.
when it decreases, it's going to cause it to go higher there. So.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we look at some of the high schools around here, and what they pay per student is still, I'd say, a lot more. It's 20% more or whatever.
Correct.
So we still know that we're getting good value out of Pinkerton and good education for our students. So
Right.
we appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I still got more questions, so I just keep going. I know you work very closely with Nicole and Bob, but can you talk to the parents and to us about where are the areas that Pinkerton is looking to invest in for the students in curriculum, or areas that you're seeing that skills that you think that you need to expand upon or build upon that to prepare them for college or the trades or wherever they go?
Sure. So one of the things we made the change this year in our sophomore math experience, so instead of having a full year of geometry, they have a half year of geometry and a half year of statistics. Because one area we found was statistics and data analysis being an area that on the SAT students were scoring lower on. So we looked at what's a way that we can help to increase that, and knowing that even going into fields, whether it's in college or post-college and jobs, like data analysis is a huge piece of what future employment looks like. So we looked at that as an area to focus on within math, so that they get that experience before they have to take the SAT, but then also they have it so that way they're able to carry it out in other courses too. So looking at those connections between courses, so data analysis is not solely in statistics class and math, that it also is in science, it's in social studies, it's in English, in the literature you're reading, and that. So breaking down some of those barriers of, the old mindset of it used to be like, I'm going to English and all I'm going to do is read and write. Well, it's also now interpreting what we're reading, and how does that connect, and the data that we're reading about there, and how does it connect to science, and things along those lines. So I think looking at those areas, so obviously looking always at our, we look at our test scores, maths, so English, where do our students excel, where are there areas that they struggle in, and what are the common themes there, and how does that help them in the future? Because the last thing we want to do is just teach to the test.
Right.
The last thing we'd like to do is say, hey, we've got these excellent SAT scores, and they do great on the SAT, but then the application places where they fall apart and they don't succeed or do well after the fact. It's really taking what they learn and then are they able to apply it in college? Are they able to apply it in the trades that they go into? Are they able to see that connection that if they're, they're in welding, they see the arc and they make that connection, okay, well, there's that math and science that I learned about, or in building trades or things along those lines. So
Okay.
making those connections and really continue to work to help to, educate them for jobs that, who knows what the jobs are going to be. Like, we don't know what the workforce is going to entail as far as their careers 20 years from now. They're going to be doing things that we never thought. Go back 10, 15 years ago, you think of the students that were gaming, all the time. You think, what a waste of time. They're the ones operating the drones that are producing all these, not only the cool footage, but all these other information that we're using in other areas and that. And I mean, that skill set that they had from gaming directly relates to drone and things like that. So I think there are ways that now the shift has been, what are they interested in? How can we make that connection so they can learn those skills and then apply them elsewhere?
Okay. I got two more questions. One of them kind of, I know, Carl, you have a big one later on, and we'll be talking about policy, but you want to ask him, or I'm wondering what Pinkerton's doing about AI. Everybody's talking about Chat GPT, right? And there's other ones, but what are you all doing, and what are you considering, or what is your stance on it? It's got to be a topic. Let's put it.
It is. So our tech integration specialist does a 5 for 5 series and she did one last week that I think it ended at the beginning of this week. It had to do with AI and Chat GPT and that, and just sharing the information about it. I think the worst thing that we can do is put our head in the sand and say, we're going to ignore it, and it has no place within the curriculum. I think it's a balance of how AI's here, it's only going to become even more. How are we teaching everyone the proper use for it with that you can't just type in, because when the first time I heard it, I typed in, meeting agenda, and all of a sudden it came up, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't have to think about how to create a meeting anymore. Here's my agendas. But then you start to look at it, you start to dive into it, and you're like, okay, well, there's the format there, but then you need to take that and you need to apply it and put some more into it. So part is that synthesizing piece. So AI is going to get you so far with certain things, but then you have to apply other aspects to it. So how do we integrate that? How do we teach the students that, just typing in certain keywords and certain things and asking for an essay on a particular topic, you're going to get something, but you need to be able to dive into it some more and use that as your outline, and then you're exploring it some more and that. So I think it's definitely one of those things that we just got to try and get ahead of, where it is with the technology and how are we using it? How do we learn how to use it? How do we help our students learn how to use it? So that way we're better prepared.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
I thought it was funny when you did that, Shannon turned around, she was like, huh. As just kind of a bigger thing, the world's changing really quickly. We want to try to have the kids prepared for a future that we don't really know or understand. How is Pinkerton going to look different 5 or 10 years from now? Like, what are your long-term goals? Like, how do you feel like you're going to shape the school over time for the future? And I know that's a broad question, but
it's like that, the crystal ball, like looking into it. I was on a podcast, got asked the question, like, what is education in 2050? And when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, well, when I entered education, it was 2002, 2050, kind of a little bit more than halfway through getting there. And I think back to 2002, it was like we just started using email, and it was like, if you got 5 emails in a day, like, that was a rough day. Now, if you get 5 emails in a minute, that's a rough minute. But just the things, and it's very subtle, the change. But when you really think about where it was and where we're going, I think this technology is going to just keep advancing more and more rapidly. And I think if you look at history, you look at changes, and you look at over a broad time, you're like, wow, that really moves slowly. But if you look at a smaller spot, you can see how quickly things changed. And I think that's where we're at with technology. Technology is just going to keep changing and changing and changing, and we're just going to have to continue to work with it and implement it in the classroom to help the students. But I think that in-person piece, like, it's there. And I think that's one thing coming out of the pandemic, that we realized that there's that social aspect that can't be replicated through the screens and just connecting through Zoom meetings and things like that, that we're having that in-person piece to connect and to learn from each other is important. I think the other aspect of it is the world's going to continually get smaller and smaller. So when we look at different projects and different things, and I think tapping into like what the students come up with, they'll start to come up with ideas and solutions to whether it's the environment and environmental change in that. I wouldn't be surprised and think that even more so, there's going to be the connection from, Pinkerton is a school in New Hampshire, working with a school in California, working with a school in London and a school in China, all on a common project towards a solution, and seeing what the different atmospheric pressures are and societal pressures are in their area, and how are there ways to combat, whether it's climate change or hunger or things like that. So I think in many ways, we're going to see that get really small in that regard. But I think we're going to still have, the teacher in the classroom that's going to be helping to guide and make those connections for the students.
And the second question I had is more concrete, which is, you were talking about part of the pay increase, or part of the increase is pay increases. What are you seeing for trends in teacher retention? Like, I know you're not going to be able to pull it off the top of your head exactly, but has there been change in teacher retention for you? And what's your average teacher retention year to year?
Gosh, teacher-wise, I'd have to dive into it a little bit more for teachers, because roughly, because I think of it in the totality of, all employees and that, and usually somewhere between 5-10% for all employees, faculty, staff, everything, is where we kind of are on average. To me, I always look at, where are they going? Is it a lateral move? Are they just going from one school to the next? Or is it an upward move? Are they going to a different, like an administrative position or something along those lines? Or are they just leaving education completely? And I think that last one was what we've seen a lot more of over the past couple of years, is that leaving education completely and going somewhere else. And there definitely has been more the past couple of years than there has been prior to that. So part of that is looking at, what are the ways that we're doing to make sure that people know that they're valued and they're an important part of what we do, and we want them to stay a member of our community, working with our students.
Do you guys have a teacher mentorship program?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a 1-2 year and then a 3 to 5 year program. So there's, we really work closely on, invest a lot of time and money into it.
Good. All right. I think the last question I have is, we always, I know there was a bill in the state about personal finance courses, and I know that there's kids that, I've seen graduate Pinkerton and other schools that don't have that personal acumen, for financial acumen, I should say.
Right.
Can you just speak to, parents of Pinkerton, what is available? So if they think that, their children need more of that, or they want to just know what opportunities are?
Sure. So, there's the economics course that they have to take with as a part finance in there. We have a finance course, for them to take as well. And then other aspects of looking at integrating that more specifically in a new class that can speak to that, but then also integrating it in classes throughout to get multiple touch points. Because the other part of it, you teach economics, it's taught sophomore year. You teach a sophomore about, college debt or credit card,
Yeah.
How relevant is it at that point in that? So the scope and the understanding of it isn't necessarily there. So it's not just that one-shot deal of hit it here, you learn it, and then you're good. It's how can we filter it through other classes and that, and add additional classes with that. So we had added a senior capstone course a year ago. We have a handful of students that are taking part in that, but part of that was to tie in a lot of that financial piece and really do it their senior year. So as they're applying to colleges and that, understand, okay, well, college is going to cost you, if it's $50,000 that you're going to pay out of pocket for it, what does $50,000 over 4 years mean that you're taking on for debt? What's your interest rate? How long is it going to take you to pay it off? So at what point are you going to be debt-free from college, right, and where are you going to be in your life at that point in time? And also understand, what is it that you want to do for a career, and really looking at what's your salary, and benefits package going to look like for that type of career, and then looking at what it's going to cost you to go to this university, and make sure that you're making a good decision as far as, is that the right step or right process for you there?
Okay. Very good. Anyone else?
I just want to make a comment just based on that. I went to one of the CTE nights. My son went right over to the engineering course, but we went past an accounting
Yes.
Group. I've never seen anybody talk so enthusiastically about accounting in my life. So you guys are doing something right there, because they were pretty excited about it.
I majored in accounting in college and that, and for looking at numbers and spreadsheets and ledgers and that, you find people that really like it. We can really geek out over debits and credits, and you got to only use pencils, and that's where red's not a good color.
All right. Well, Dr. Powers, we really appreciate you coming and speaking with us tonight. I know there's a wealth of information between you and Mr. Thompson all the time, and a clear avenue to talk to you, so we really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you all.
you're welcome. Have a good night.
Thank
You
you.
too. All right, Shannon, you can go now. All right. All right, so this next part of our agenda, what we're going to be talking to is about the school addition, the renovation plan that we've been talking about pretty much at every board meeting. But tonight we're going to do a little something different. Typically we'll go through slides and we'll talk about what's there, what's the benefits, what's the cost. But tonight we're going to be turning this almost directly over to our building committee to highlight the work they've done and to have them say what they thought about the plan, what do they think about what's being presented to the public, and just to give everybody at home background on the building committee. Not only back in March did we talk about, as soon as the last vote went through, about the change of the plan, that we had to do something different, change it up from what was the past, bring it down to focus on priorities. We also talked that we need to bring a building committee together that's beyond what has been, at least in the last few years, and bring members of the public in. And we were really targeting various backgrounds, so that way not everybody was the same. So we have, as you'll hear in a moment, we have different members representing different parts of the community. And that was the biggest part, is we wanted more people to represent the community, to give really a good indication of what this plan looks like, what's the good on it, what should we be prioritizing, and ultimately how should we spend? Meaning, is it a 5 years, is it a 10-year? How do we go about to make sure we're focusing on what hits people's pockets at the end of the day? And so back in March we started. Mr. Thompson led the building committee and put a call out there for a number of members. Some members are still here. Some members had other priorities. They went and did other things. But I think it gave a good representation of what the community is thinking, and a good representation of consulting to the board. What are some recommendations that maybe the board might not have made, but we definitely listened. I know there was a number of items we said, well, what does the building committee think? And we got that feedback and we went with it. It made sense. And then, we met over the summer a little bit, but then we really ramped up in, the latter half of Q3 into Q4, meeting, I'd say pretty much every week. We had just under 10 meetings. I think we landed at 9 meetings so far, where a lot of good dialogue happened. So with that, unless Mr. Thompson, you have anything else, I want to turn it over to the building committee and let them talk. Good? All right. Who wants to talk first? Want to go left to right? Tallest to shortest?
Hi, my comments are very short because you're not the right audience for what I want to say, really. But since I've been in this project since 2010, when it began, I have a very good perspective of what is going on. And unlike previous years, I can tell you point blank, you have a winner here. This can pass, and I will help you sell it, okay? What we're doing is we're replacing the 4 classrooms that we should have built when we had kindergarten, at the cost of the state. That wasn't done. And that's why we met in 2010. After that, we were trying to do other things. The changes to the front office is perfect because that frees up space now for special education that never had space. Okay, plus we will have a good library. Plus the security is good. That's basically what we're doing with this project. That is all we need, and that's perfect. There are other things here, as you know, the septic will be coming up and all that, but that can be done before. But this particular proposal, as it is precisely what I can support, and I will say that in public. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Denise Meyer.
Hi, Denise Meyer, for those of you who do not know me. I'm representing, I guess, the parent community. I have 2 young children in the district, one in elementary, one in middle school, and I also have a background in marketing. So one of the things that I'm lending to the committee is just expertise on communications, whether that's visual or just how we're doing presentations and so forth. So What I wrote, I do have a little bit of script. I promise I will try to keep it light. I'm the original ChatGPT. I made it on my own. So with that, I'll just kind of run through it. So I wanted to raise my voice today in support of the renovation and also outline why I joined the committee. I joined the committee as I saw it as a great opportunity to help Hampstead citizens really understand the reason behind the renovation and the value for the investment, because that's really what this is. Yes, it's an expense, but it's an incredible investment. I've been on the tours. I'm in and out of the elementary school for volunteer purposes all the time. Having experienced firsthand the school's limitations, I believe the needs haven't been amplified enough. I appreciate that our school board and administration have been reaching out to the community and been very transparent with all the communications. I think that's huge. I will say I wish that more of the community met them halfway and came to the tours and came to the meetings to have these firsthand dialogues. The proposal before the taxpayers represents the hard work of the building committee and also the admin team. The visioning process, if you will ensures that the school building is a valuable resource for the community as a whole. And the plan, which goal is to engender buy-in, of course, is the result of actively soliciting and including input from the public directly into the project. This plan is an investment in Hampstead. We are addressing prioritized needs, as previously discussed, established again, not by school leadership, but also the community. So we have safety, special education, student learning as focus, and then, like any investment, there should be returns, and here they are as I see them. Improved physical and safety conditions, enhanced educational environment, increased accessibility for facilities for special education. Improved physical and safety conditions. The harsh reality is we need to do more to protect our students. If you've gone to HCS, you know that you can get buzzed in. You have almost immediate access to the students once you're through the doors. Is this really the best that we can be doing for our students? Are we really protecting them for the unknown threats? Investing in a secure entryway and repositioning the admin area supports the goal of safety. The enhanced educational environment. Not only do we gain additional classrooms with our investment in repurposed space, we reclaim the library as a vital piece of 21st century learning. We've all but commandeered most of the library now. Anyone who's been in there recently has seen that it has shrank down quite a bit over the years. With a focus on literacy, is it really wise that we're doing this to our space? The redesigned library will provide specific areas for problem solving, analytical thinking, imagination, creativity, and digital skills, while regaining space for teamwork and collaboration. As I think David mentioned earlier, we do have growing class sizes. More families are moving to town with young children, and anyone who's vied for a spot in full-day kindergarten and not been able to attain that due to lack of space knows the frustration and hardship that that's causing. Denied admission also turns away revenue, as we charge close to $5,000 per student for full-day kindergarten. One of the pain points discussed amongst the parent community, both current and prospective, is what has happened to test scores and our ranking over the years. We have excellent educators, but does our aging facility factor into the equation? When people think of the elementary school, some of the things that come to mind are outdated, cramped, or as my kids say, dusty and musty. It's pretty disheartening. Aging facilities make the school feel like a chore as opposed to creative learning, a space which gives the children the tools they need to succeed. The renovation can help improve students' outlook and enthusiasm, which enhances the learning process. Studies have shown how environmental factors of school buildings impact the academic performance of students. Research demonstrates that well-designed schools have the ability to boost a student's academic performance, specifically in the areas of reading, math, and writing. There are many things that can be done in a renovation to increase students' attention and ability to focus. For example, large windows lets the light in, fixing different HVAC issues, which ensures a more consistent and comfortable temperature. Both things are proven to help increase a student's ability to focus and concentrate. An investment in solutions to improve student outcomes, to me, is a win. Increased accessibility of facilities for special education students. I think our school leadership works to find solutions to new program demands, such as the need for more push-in for special education, ESL, OT, PT, and other small group learning that's now an important part of school programming. What about the family who's told that their special needs child needs to be sent out of district? At an increased cost, by the way, to us as taxpayers. Because we're lacking the facilities and the instructional support to educate their child, how are our choices impacting those Hampstead families? An investment in inclusivity while reducing the cost of out-districting students, to me, is also a win. We've talked about students, but what about our staff? The national teacher turnover rate is alarmingly high. I have teachers in my own family, one that has left the education industry and the other one who's transitioned. Wouldn't it be nice if we create a space that teachers are proud and enthusiastic to come into every day? For each time the renovations are voted down, there's a greater chance that teachers will look to district with more modern facilities for new opportunities to grow their career. We've already lost talented teachers to other districts. Today, we're asking them to be creative within constraining conditions, converted closets, repurposed storage areas, portioned off spaces, and makeshift classrooms. Let's invest in a building that instills pride in the students, staff, and community. Renovating a school offers an opportunity for the community to invest in its future while providing a safe and welcoming environment for its children. It also means new jobs, and it avails space to the general public for use and gatherings. Another return, investing in school renovations often improves the values of property in town. After the town of Brookline, Massachusetts completed a school renovation project, they saw greater increases in housing prices than more affluent places such as Rochester. My home is an investment, and I'd like to bolster that too. As a parent, I sometimes think that my support of the renovation is selfish, but at the same time, it's also selfless, excuse me. So in the spirit of leaving a place better than we found it, we'll create a wonderful environment for our future leaders, business owners, doctors, homemakers, and tradespeople alike. This is our opportunity for the community to invest in its future. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Sorry, I rambled on. Again, I'm a writer, not a speaker.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Parnell. I am a community member on the building committee. I wanted to speak tonight about my support for the project because I come with a long history of being involved with this project and supporting it. I looked back and realized it's been almost 10 years since I've been advocating for this, from being a volunteer to a board member and now a member of this committee as purely a community member. I joined the committee a little later in the process, so I kind of had the benefit of coming into the meetings and seeing what was almost finalized plans. And being involved for 10 years, I maybe am not so easy to impress when I've seen this through so many iterations, but I was really impressed with what had been developed and how clearly it represented that the administration, the board, and the committee itself was taking the feedback from the community. The townspeople who have spoken up, both positively and negatively, have conveyed that they don't want excess. So the board and the administration, from what I could see, very clearly was trying to balance the priorities of the school and the children with the fact that people need to feel like they're getting a bang for their buck or not paying for things that don't seem necessary. So in my opinion, this plan does all of that while keeping the most important priorities at the forefront and making sure those needs are taken care of. For the special education focus, every child who lives in Hampstead deserves the opportunity to attend school with their friends and their neighbors. This plan gives that appropriate special education space so that no child is being sent to school in another town because we can't provide those services for them. They also don't deserve to be going into a closet in a sub-basement level to get those services. By keeping the Hampstead kids in town and in our schools, we're both creating a benefit for those students, but also a benefit for the taxpayers. As Denise pointed out, when we're talking about return on investment, it costs astronomically more to send a child to another district. There are transportation costs, there are tuition costs that are much higher than keeping them within our town. Looking at the student learning priority, our most pressing issue is space. It's no surprise to anyone that Central School has no space left to convert. We can't make any more closets into learning spaces. We're using hallways for storage when necessary, and that's necessary a lot of the time. And we have classrooms that shouldn't have as many students in them as they do. Now, I think our staff does an amazing job of dealing with this, but it shouldn't be dealing with it. We should be providing adequate space for our kids. The new library space that's going to be used and built for this plan has two benefits. We're giving appropriate space for a 21st century education, and then we're freeing up 2 classroom spaces instead of having to build additional new construction. So in my opinion, this shows a plan that shows both efficiency of scale while meeting the needs that need to be met. Denise mentioned safety, which is so important to all of us. It should be so important to everyone. And Central School is not up to modern safety standards. There's no way to get around that. It is in our faces every day. Being grandfathered in, we have these stairways that are grandfathered in. We have entryways that are grandfathered in. That shouldn't be acceptable in any way for safety. The new administration section, I really like the way that this plan takes the administration section and combines it with a nurse's office in the same area. It's thinking about safety in another way, but instead of having to, safety includes health and wellness, and when you have someone who has to walk through an entire school to get picked up, or you have a child who's injured on the playground and has to be transported through the entire school, none of that really makes sense, and it adds to our lack of safety in the building. So I know tonight I've used the words our children, Hampstead's children, pretty frequently. I don't have kids in Central School anymore. In fact, after this year, I'm not going to have kids in Hampstead schools at all. But that doesn't mean I stop caring about a project that can benefit our town, both for our kids and a return on investment for our community at large. We are a community, and therefore we all bear responsibility for the care and keeping of each other. The board and administration have laid out very well what the needs of the school are. Community members have given their feedback, those who have chosen to be part of the solution anyways. I agree with Denise that I wish there were more people participating in this conversation. But a well thought out, efficient, and appropriate plan has been presented. And as a community, we've been faced with this problem for almost 10 years. It's time we look at the 3 main priorities of Central School and decide that it's time to address them. I will be supporting this article, and I hope the rest of the town will join me in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Might have to move that up a little.
Just a little. Good evening. My name is Bob Weimer. I'm a resident of town. Actually, I've lived in town for almost 25 years before I moved away for a few, and I'm back. And one of the interesting parts about the town is that it has always tried to be frugal. And in so doing, sometimes I think we lose sight of the long-term objectives and values. I am the husband of a school teacher. My daughter is a school teacher, but I will admit that teaching is probably not my strong suit, nor am I the right person to evaluate the space or requirements. I am an engineer, and the way I look at things may be a little bit different. I appreciate the remarks that Denise and Jorge and Caitlin have made. I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. I'm going to approach it as if it's a project that I've worked on over the 50 years of my civil engineering career, and there was really a formula for getting projects approved and ultimately getting projects built. So the next slide shows that the need for the project is the real key. We want to evaluate all the alternatives and come up with the one that is the best to solve the problem. We want to evaluate using people that are well qualified, not just the people here in town. And we want to get the lowest reasonable cost, not the lowest cost, but the lowest reasonable cost to achieve the needs. So if we look at the needs list, it's been mentioned many times that student and staff safety and security was really important. Accommodating additional students, and in particular the kindergarten space, and also increasing the special needs. We've all said the same, identified the same basic requirements. But I think the one that sticks in my mind is the whole idea that we want to restore the Quality Learning Center to the Hampstead Central School and make it frankly, just as good as any school in the state. It's critical to me that the town demonstrate its commitment to education, and the school needs here are clear and need to be met. The next slide, please, one after this one. The evaluation of alternatives was actually independent, but I think the key point is that the needs were established certainly by the school department, the board, and the administration, but more importantly, we also asked for a third-party review. And I think that third-party review was critical to demonstrating that whatever decisions we made were in fact the right ones. And we had the New Hampshire School Administrators Association do that analysis. They provided a study. I believe it's on the web if you want to see it. But I think it's critical to say that they agreed that we have needs and that the needs are consistent with what we're intending to invest in. Next, we had the security issues, which have been mentioned many times, but we had a Homeland Security analysis done. Let's satisfy the needs of the school by meeting those needs. We had a design architect, so someone who is independently knowledgeable about school buildings and school design. They participated and provided us with the design. We have a designer builder who has done the cost estimating and overall planning of the project, and clearly they have demonstrated to the town many times their skills in managing projects and helping us get the best value for the investment we're making. But their overall planning will also be, and project execution will be overseen by a third party. So we have the checks and balances in the program that should provide and will provide and have provided the town in the past the kind of oversight that you would expect. And the lowest cost reasonable alternative was selected. We are looking at a building improvement that's going to last 30 to 40 years. That's the kind of investment the town should be making in this type of facility. The optimal use of the existing spaces with minimal additional investment is critical to the success of this project. Yes, we're spending a significant amount of money to build some new space, but the spaces that remain are going to be reinvigorated, reused for great and needed purposes. We have a competitive process for the contractors, subcontractors. So this project will not be, if you will, awarded to a single firm based upon what's happened to date. It's in fact going to be a competitive process to bring on the subcontractors that execute the various components. And one of the values of the firm that we've hired to be the designer builder, so to speak, is that they look at the project continuously for ways to save money. And in the last project, I understand they saved well over 5% of the original estimate. So we certainly can expect similar results this time around. So I am in fact recommending to anyone that we vote in favor of this project, and as I always say, let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jorge, Denise, Caitlin, and Bob for coming tonight to speak to it. I don't think there's much more to say than what you've all said, so board members, anything in addition?
Well, just I've been able to sit on a few of the meetings with you all and witness what's going on, and the collaboration and the effort and everything that you guys are doing to support this, to drive this, and to really hash out what we need. I can't thank you all enough. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your investment. I know we all appreciate it.
All right. The only thing on the addition to the renovation plan was we had spoke last time that we were looking to send out a flyer of sorts. And so in front of you, board members, you have, let's say, the draft. There's probably a couple edits we'll make, but we would like you to take a look at that. And this is what we would want to send out at least once We are thinking about if we send this out a second time, so we are considering, if the board approves, to send one out in the beginning of February and then another one just before the vote. We'll see if we want to actually do that, but at this time, I'd like to put a motion in to appropriate $2,000 for the mailing to the entire town, the postcard that's in front of you. Erin has worked with the printer to get the cost, and for those that don't know, she has an expertise in postcards and printing. There's other ways we're going to market this, of course, but we're looking for a printing of this and mailing in February. And good. No, if everybody wishes it, they're okay? Jorge?
I have a question. That card that you have there, it doesn't say vote for, does it?
No, it does not. This is not electioneering.
Thank you.
Yep.
No, it's simply, basically, it's just states the top 3 priorities. Yeah.
Yep.
And it just tells the date of the vote, but that's all.
It's $2,000 to print and mail them?
Yeah, it's just under 2,000, but we, round numbers right now. We won't expend every penny of that for sure.
And just, not that you guys are going to necessarily know the terminology, but it's an every door direct mail, which is actually cheaper postage. The way that goes, it just goes to residents, so you don't have to get a list of all the different people. It just goes to all the residents who have a valid address, mailing address.
All right. So my motion is to appropriate $2,000 out of the budget to cover the cost of the mailing of the flyer.
I'll second that.
Yeah, second. All right. Any further discussion?
Just some clarification, if I could.
What's that?
Some clarification, if I could.
Sure.
Is it one mailing?
Right now it's
once,
one mailing.
Or one mailing going out twice?
I think what we're trying to approve right now is just one mailing.
Okay.
Potentially, we would consider doing another, but I think we're doing just one at a time, I think, at this point.
We're just going to do one right now. We may come back in February and at the board meeting in February to say appropriate another amount for a second mailing. But right now we say at least this, and our target was around the 7th to the 10th of February is what we're looking at. So by approving it, allocating the funds, we should be able to get this over to the printer and printed and mailed and have it in hand of everybody in the first week or so of February. So, another?
I'm getting old. Before we leave, I want to say, this would not have been possible without a new board and a new superintendent. That's what made it happen. The mess we had before had nothing to do with the project, but there were too many conflicting desires, shall I say. But when you guys came in and Bob came in, all of a sudden we flew. That's why it is successful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. So, any other questions before we put this to a vote? Nope. All right, all approved? All right, thank you. And then Erin, you and I can talk later about this.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing is if we are going to consider doing a second mailing, we're going to just want to decide if it's going to be exactly the same or if we want to put a different, maybe additional different messaging out there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's
So we'll see.
hear feedback of,
Yep.
people that got the flyer, but also we have a deliberative coming up, so if anything changes.
Absolutely, yep.
And if we just, after a little bit more of, soaking it in, we might want to add something to this, but to your point, it might change, so that's why we're only going to approve one for now.
Yep. And we did, just for reference, we did price this out to print as one big lot in case we were going to do 2 mailings, because sometimes the more you print, the less money it costs overall. But there was no cost savings because it's all digital.
So I just ask board members if maybe 24 hours, if you want to take a look at it and give feedback, send it to myself and Erin if you have any feedback, any modifications we'd make before printing. So, all right. All right. I know one of my highlights of the year is hearing Mr. Mackey, and so Mr. Mackey's coming up to talk about the facilities and all the work that him and his team have done. As he's walking up, I was involved in the town forum this past weekend, and somebody had come up and said, the great job that the facilities team is doing. And that was really great to hear, somebody coming up and just giving those accolades without, you just don't typically hear those. So just a kudos, Jeff.
Well, we
as you
appreciate it.
start.
So yeah, a little facilities update. We'll start off with staffing. As usual, no problems here for me. Fully staffed. I did have a retirement earlier in the year, which led to a promotion of one of my employees to being a head custodian, which then opened up another position, which I was able to bring in one of our grant-funded employees on full-time, which is good because we kind of knocked it out of the park with those two. With that being said, we still have one remaining grant-funded employee at Hsd Central School, which is a huge help there. It just gives me a lot of versatility. I know Dr. Cheney would probably agree. In that environment, it's nice to have 2 day custodians. And it adds flexibility if I ever have any, my staff members out at large. If I'm missing a couple, I can move people around. Onto the budget. The facilities budget, it is a little bit tighter right now, tighter than years past. Obviously, cost of materials, labor, delivery has hurt, but I've been keeping a pretty close eye on it. I've just cut back on a little bit of a few in-house projects, and I've kind of just been a little bit more tricky with money that way. It is only January. We have to make this till, July 1st, so I've been just very cautious and keeping an eye on that. We did have another unexpected project come up. The Family Consumer Science floor was a vinyl plank floor that was done probably roughly 5-ish years ago. The glue was compromised. We here at the middle school, we have, concrete's very porous, and this school has a higher content of moisture, not dangerous by any means, but it didn't bode well with the adhesive that was underneath that vinyl plank, and it started to squeeze up, and just planks were getting loose, and it was getting all over the floors. My crew would clean it. It would look beautiful that night. The next morning, it's seeping up again. So I ended up having a polished concrete floor done in there, which is fantastic because now that entire wing is all polished concrete. It's going to be easy maintenance. It looks nice. It works well in that room, easy to clean, and the teacher herself is obsessed with it. So that's a huge help. Moving on to current state of facilities. As usual, you'll hear me repeat this over and over again. Overall, we're in good standing. We have very good. The buildings and grounds that we do have we're very fortunate to have. They're in good shape. Other than with keeping up with preventative maintenance and some smaller in-house projects over breaks and days off, all major projects have been completed. Anything that I had budgeted for is done 99.9%. I do have one small hallway carpet project at HCS that I'm waiting for. We ran into a little bit of a hiccup. They're going to come back February break to finish that. We started to demo a piece and realized that the floor was a little bit different underneath, and we need to examine that before we rip it up on one day. I want to have a few days in case we run into any problems. Other than that, though, that should be done February break. And then just looking towards the future. Future priorities are, just continued maintenance and keeping up with this place. Focus on some larger projects in the future, as we discussed. The oil tank here. I know I have on this upcoming budget the Central School oil tank. Well, this oil tank's going to need to be taken care of in the very nearer future, along with some paving and roofing. But currently, we are in good shape. We don't need a roof every single year. We could probably do every couple. Same with, the paving. Do it in pieces. The worst goes, and we'll go from there. And other than that, I'm just planning for the summer in hopes that the budget passes. Like I mentioned, the oil tank at HCS is our biggest ticket. I'm not going to be able to get a lot done, but I still have some floors and hopefully convert the Central School stage wall. It's a foldable wall. I'm having that actually currently designed right now to make it a permanent wall. So that's on the project. So we'll still get some stuff done other than that oil tank, but unfortunately, that's just the world of facilities. Sometimes the money goes to something you don't see, but it's very important. So other than that, that's about it. So questions?
Board members, questions for Mr. Mackey? All right. Always kudos, Jeff, so appreciate your team's hard work.
Yep, thank you. And I owe it to my crew.
If you don't mind, Jeff, would you mind, while the board is here, just explaining real quick, so we're looking to remove the oil tank, the underground storage tank at the Central School?
Correct.
Replacing it with an above-ground tank?
Correct.
Could you let the board and the public know where that above-ground tank is slated to go?
So you all will be a little bit more familiar. So the tank currently is behind the preschool classroom. So it would be Mrs. Mahoney's classroom, the classroom out back that kind of sticks out. It's under the ground there, close to that 60s wing, so it's under the pavement. It's actually going to be tucked up more in that cove area next to her classroom. And it's going to be a much smaller tank. The current one we have is a 10,000. We're going to be moving forward with a 5,000. So most of it will be blocked by the building itself, but you will still see the front end of it. And if later on we ever do, long down the road, if we ever decide to do something in that little cove area, it will still be wide open, usable space possibly. So, but you will, Mr. Dowd was getting to it, you will see it. It poses no danger, just as much as it being in the ground, which is not minimal.
Yep.
So it's, but long-term, it's going to benefit us because the tank going above ground 50-plus years, if it goes in ground 20 to 30 years, do the math one
Yep.
time, it's very, it'll be cost-effective and much easier to maintain, but it will be, it's more of an aesthetic. You will see it. So,
Okay.
but we know it's there anyways.
No, just on top of that, also advocate to anybody who has not done any of the tours with Jeff. He'll go top to bottom of the schools, show you exactly what he does, what is going on there. So
Every bit.
It's worth it. It's a good tour. It's better than Disneyland.
All right, well, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. All right, next one up is make sure I get this right, yep, the calendar first reading for 2023-2024 with Nicole.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. In your packets, you will see a draft calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. So this calendar there's not a significant number of changes to last year. You will see that we have changed one of our early release days to December 22nd. It was previously earlier in December, and we decided to move it to the day before school vacation based on feedback from the staff and from several families. But let me go in order actually. Let's start with August 25th, which would be the first day of school for teachers. All teachers would come back August 25th. First day of school for students will be Wednesday, August 30th. And we'll have a nice long Labor Day weekend. Everyone will be off Friday and Monday. We will have another long weekend on Columbus Day. Our staff will have a PD day that Friday, but families will have a 4-day weekend. For Thanksgiving break, there will be 3 days off, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, before the weekend. And then I know that the families at home are probably trying to plan next February break, right? So February 26th to March 1st will be February break. That is the week following President's Day. Most Massachusetts schools will be on break the week prior. Spring break will be April 22nd through 26th. That is the week after Patriots' Day. Again, most Mass schools will be the week prior, so hopefully that will allow our families to enjoy some travel. And then right now, pending snow days, next year, the last day of school would be June 17th. Also worth noting here, next November, we traditionally do a November early release day, followed by parent conferences. And that helps us on election years, but I have learned that in odd years, no election on odd years. So there will be no election, but we will still do parent conferences and an early release on November 6th and 7th. Otherwise, this calendar very closely mirrors the Pinkerton proposed calendar so that our early release days line up. There are a few professional days that don't line up, but mostly they're similar. And I just wanted to kind of put a quick plug out there. I know early release days are, somewhat challenging for families, and I just want to remind all of you the importance of that time for our staff, not only to complete mandatory trainings for their licensures, but also time for collaboration and common planning and PLC talk, and some of our vertical discussions. So we've tried to compact that schedule as much as possible. With the early releases only being about 80 minutes, we're able to kind of check off a number of very important trainings for the staff while minimizing the instructional impact for families.
I know that some of these were added back and we didn't have them, maybe they got taken out at one point, and you guys we added them back in last year. I'm just curious, how did that go?
How did the early release days go?
Like your early release days, professional development, were you able to do what you wanted to do?
Yeah, well, we've proposed a calendar, and this year we do it together as an H team. We were able to get a lot of mandatory trainings done. One really important thing, and so the time is invaluable. One really exciting and important thing we're committed to doing well is our suicide prevention training. So there are a number of required trainings. Suicide prevention is a relatively new law. It's a 2-hour training, which we did as a webinar last year. Really was not ideal. So we've moved to a face-to-face model, trained our own staff internally. So that will happen face-to-face moving forward. And we're also building in a little bit of debriefing time. But that's just one example. We have school safety trainings, mandatory reported trainings. We have all the bloodborne pathogens, slips, trips, and falls, harassment trainings. We have school safety. Yes, yes. And because some of the trainings are mandatory, but we also weave in professional development time. So some of that time is spent with either curriculum companies or assessment companies that we contract with, or specialized trainings for staff who do, for example, MSB. I don't know what that stands for. Oh, Medicaid, I'm sorry, MSB training is Medicaid training. So we have staff that need specific training tailored to their jobs. I cannot even imagine how we would accomplish all of that without, we're struggling to fit it all in with what we have now. I don't see how it would be possible to keep everyone in compliance without it.
My questions, I hesitate to bring it up, but it's also like, we've got if you look at the last day of school, it's an early release on a Monday.
I know, it's rough.
So.
And teachers would have to come on the Tuesday too.
Right. But I
know.
also think, again, I was pretty bummed this year. I didn't think we were going to get any snow, and then we got a few days of snow.
Right.
So I'm sure that we'll get a couple days there of snow days that might push us in there. But I just wonder if we should be planning on the early release day of a Monday for the last day.
I did notice that.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything here we can do about sliding that over, and that week is only if we have snow days. That's my only thought that I come up with on this. It looks great schedule otherwise, but that's my only feedback on.
If there was no snow days, though, we typically hit our hours well before that point.
Yeah.
So maybe in a March or April meeting, we'll be able to discuss that if need be.
Yeah, and we, looked at that last day on a Monday, realizing, as you've said, we will have snow days. Also, it's important to note, too, that there's been great cooperation between the board and the associations with the modification of the last day of school. So at this point in time, I don't necessarily see it as an issue. I would agree. I don't know how productive that day would be if it did fall on a Monday. So, yeah.
My only other question is that if I'm reading this right on Pinkerton's, so Pinkerton has school on their first day for students is on a Friday before Labor Day weekend. Am I reading that right? Or is that, what's the highlighted?
So Friday, September 1st, yeah, it's highlighted in yellow, but that is their long weekend. So the yellow indicates no school on their calendar. They are doing opening days, so they do a staggered orientation,
Right.
so they don't have, 3,200 kids on the campus at once. So they do
Okay.
freshmen and juniors on the 30th, sophomores and seniors on the 31st.
Got it. All right, thanks for that.
And then I think the first full day for all of the high school kids will be Tuesday the 5th.
Okay. All right.
As far as snow days go, I've been in education for 19 years. I've never seen a year that we didn't have snow days. So I'm pretty comfortable with that being where it is.
Well, back in my day, we used to go uphill both ways in the snow with no shoes on. So we didn't have school days then, snow days. No. All right, no, thanks.
I grew up in the so that now.
Sure.
Back in my day.
They were built into the calendar, and so actually, we didn't have a snow day, I kind of did the opposite, we got out earlier.
You got out earlier?
I'm just curious, if there's a reason why.
I don't have a good answer to that. I suppose we could say the last day would be June 20th, pending, 2 snow days. That may be semantics. Yeah.
I think, honestly, it's a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Imagine adding 5 days to the calendar. You look at that and you're like, wow, it's going to be a long year. It's nice to look at it realistically and just add the days. And again, it's nice that the board is able to work with the association to determine like what the true last day of school is. It seems like there's a lot of flexibility in actually setting the day as we get closer towards the end of the year.
Yep. All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion to move this 2023-2024 calendar to second reading.
No second.
Second by me. Any discussions? Hold the horse. No. All right, all approved? All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hubner. All right. So next what we have here is just a reminder to everyone at home and in the audience that coming up and I'm going to make sure I get this date right, February 7th, we have the deliberative session at 7 p.m. here at the middle school to go over the warrant articles. But prior to that, for those in the audience or at home or in the board, there is the filing for candidates. We have 2 open spots, 3 years each, where you can start tomorrow. Correct? Is it tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. You can start filing tomorrow, and you have until Friday the 3rd if you wish to run for school board. Again, for those in the audience or at the table, or those at home. And then, of course, we do have the district-wide voting, which will be Tuesday, March 14th, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Here at the middle school as well. So, unless there's any questions or commentary, we're going to move on. And we're going to turn the floor over to Mr. Dowd to talk about the 2020 financial audit update.
Yes, well, unfortunately, not yet ready for release. I was working with the audit firm. They had a couple more questions before finalizing the report. So I do have draft copies of it. I'm happy to distribute. But I'm optimistic we can get it done very, very soon, probably the next week or so. I did resolve the questions that they had. Just in formulating final financials.
Can you give the board an overview of what the additional questions were? Because last time we met, I thought that we were all done.
I thought so too, yeah. It was in relation to a grant that actually came up in the 21 audit that we then took a look back on into the 20 audit. So that, not a bad thing. It was coincidental that it happened because we have the 21 work going on at the same time we've already done. So a question had come up there and I told us to go back and make sure we're accounting for it correctly in that audit as well. So that's it. Nothing bad. Just a little bit more research because we're going back obviously a few years now, and then the grant actually started before that. So I have to go back even further than that, which takes a little bit of time.
Okay.
Can we distribute the draft 2020?
If you'd like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not complete. It is in draft form, but I say not complete. It's still subject to a final walkthrough. I mentioned the question analysis and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, that's what I'm done.
Great.
All right, so then can you give the board where we are with the 2021 audit?
No, complete on that. You need so my focus right now is going
So with this, the 2020 audit, was there any additional findings besides the one about the building and evaluating the cost of the building?
Oh, yeah, no, the thing we may see is that grant reporting, and I have to be frank with you, I'm in a great spot now because the team that I have, who's sitting right in this room right now, and get our grants reported, get them caught up. And what that means is that we'll spend the money for a particular IDA project, whatever it is, and we then submit those costs to the Department of Ed. The Department of Ed then approves them and sent us funding for those costs. Historically, those have been rather delayed in getting submitted, and it's a little bit difficult from my end because really the grant project owner is the one who has to do those submissions. So those have been behind. We knew they had been behind, had a very difficult time getting those submitted. And a lot of things happen when they get submitted timely. If there are any errors, corrections that we made, you can get them heads up on them right away. So those have been behind for a while, long before I started. The team I have sitting here right now, right at the end, just actually gotten them caught up and are billing on a monthly basis. So I suspect that they may come in and note that those have been behind, which they have been. And now we've got a good plan to get those going the right direction. We get our money. We get the money to flow. That's not an issue. It's not like we're not getting the money. It's just that it needs to be done.
No. And we appreciate that, Jess. We know in the last year, we've talked quite a bit about it, and that you're doing a bang-up job on it, so we appreciate that. And Nicole, thank you both. All right, and the last time we spoke, we wanted to have a meeting, so Mr. Thompson, if you can coordinate that with the audit firm, with Jason and I, to talk about this adverse opinion on the depreciation of the site.
The fixed assets.
The fixed assets. So if we can have that done here.
Absolutely, I can
before
set that up.
publication.
I did speak with
Pretty much.
the firm with our manager on that. And the answer is basically we can have as long as it's rational, but as long as it's supported.
Yep, so that's why we want to have that conversation, so that way we'll put that plan in place. So, it might not be in the 2021, might not even in the 2022. The expectation is for the 23 forward, we'd have a plan of getting this off the report and have a good way to account for it.
Yeah. So, gotcha. And I know previously, Timberlake used MRI resources to get that, to actually bring someone in from the outside to do that.
Yep.
Right now, an MRI is a company that supports municipalities, school districts, governmental entities by providing, if you have the county coverage, this is the firm that will be able to give you coverage for that. So I don't know what their availability is now to do that, but I expect based on what I'm seeing is happening. That one option we exercise in the past with someone.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk to them, John, at least for myself, and report back to the board. What's the gravity of this, right? How are you going to put a cost in the building, and does that really matter to us, right? We have to evaluate that too. Do we want to spend money for somebody to evaluate what's the school building cost, or what's its worth, right? And for me, in my mind, you really only care about that if you're selling it. But what are other reasons? We want to hear them. We'll report back to the board and then decide what we're going to do going forward. But it's good to know. 2022 we should have wrapped up soon. So by the next board meeting, we should have this ready for the sign off. 2021 is right behind it, and 2022 is started.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody? All right. Yep.
I don't know, on page 29, it says an SAU cannot exist as a legally separate entity to serve only one school district. It's under midway down on note 16. I don't know, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I know a bunch of SAUs that are only for one school district.
So let's go back to Timberlane and Hempstead when they were both under SA 55.
Yeah.
We had Timberlane Regional School District, Hempstead School District, and
Yeah.
we had SA 55, three
Oh,
separate
okay.
legal distinct entities.
I know what you're saying now.
Yeah, so
All
when
right.
Timberlane withdrew SA 55 as a
Yep.
legal entity, really merged into Hempstead.
Yep, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Good catch, Sean.
Any other questions for now? All right, thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Thank you, and I appreciate the board's patience on this. I know we're going to extend, so just getting this wrapped up.
Yep.
Get it done. Thank you.
So we've got first reading policies. Let me get to that first. And so in your packets, looks like the policy committee has been pretty busy. We've got 6 policies for first reading. Would anybody on the policy committee like to give an overview or discuss these?
I don't think I was at this meeting. I can speak to the last few. Yeah.
Yeah, these are from 2 separate policy committee meetings. I think one going back to December, January. So some of them are like kind of out there, a little older.
I can speak just generally. We have identified a number of updated policies through the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and the policy committee has been working very diligently to ensure that all of our policies are up to date. And, when you look at the volume of policies that are coming forward for this one meeting, I think that really demonstrates that. And I also think, too, that, we've done a nice job prioritizing some of the more important policies based upon feedback that we've received from the board or from the community. Things like, making sure that our volunteer policy is up to date, making sure that staff are trained when it comes to sexual abuse and child abuse prevention. Also, Mrs. Tomaselli spoke about suicide prevention, making sure that we have a suicide prevention and response policy, which previously we have not. Also, academic integrity and honesty. There's been a lot of conversation in the news about artificial intelligence, so we thought that was an important policy to get updated. And then also, parental rights in public education has been an issue that's been at the forefront, and that's why we bring forward the policy IGE, parental objection to specific course material. So there's a lot of policy work to be done. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to focus our attention on policies that are relevant and important to the board and to the community. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you may have relative to any of the policies here.
I can review a little bit of the volunteer one. That one we reviewed for content of trying to define more designated volunteer. There was some wording in here that. There was some wording in there that didn't really seem right. It was sort of repeating itself. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then there was some things about stipends for coaches and coaches being volunteers and assistant coaches being volunteers, some of their duties, things like that. So this just sort of fine-tunes all that to fix some of those things and to make it a little bit more clear. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you. Go ahead.
For the suicide prevention, as somebody that's in a school, it's always shocking to me that when you do have training every year, you still have people that don't understand it, don't report, have mistakes in how they report. So I think it's incredibly important that it is mandated for 2 hours a year. In one of the districts that I've worked in, they actually had role play of something that goes on in the classrooms and how you deal with it. And it's up to you guys, obviously, but that's something I think you could think about. But I think this is a good idea for in the policy. When it comes to the IKL, the academic integrity one, on 5 and dishonesty in papers, that's something that's come up recently because of ChatGPT. It says using a writing service or having somebody else write a paper for the student. New Hampshire School Board Association is looking at other language of saying, clarifying the writing service and possibly something like that, because that may or may not, if it comes to a legal challenge, that may or may not be covered. In the short term, I think we do need to make it so that it's not acceptable for students to use ChatGPT. In the long term, I do think we need to have to look at how to integrate that into teaching, and we want the kids to be prepared 20 years from now, which is almost impossible, but to start thinking as a staff and district how to put kids in a position to succeed at going forward with this. But this year, that's not something you can accomplish in 2 months before the end of the year, but just to kind of think about it long term.
So, not to interrupt you, hope I'm not. Just, that was something that was discussed at the policy meeting, and Nicole was talking about that and basically talking about how we would actually sort of bring that into the curriculum, if you will, so that the kids are aware of it and they know we know about it and they know how to use it appropriately.
Yeah, so, I mean, just having learned, like everyone here, about ChatGPT very recently, I think back to when I first started teaching in the early 2000s, as Dr. Powers had mentioned earlier, we were just starting with email, and I remember people getting very nervous about Google. Well, they're never going to need us to teach anymore because there's this Mr. Google now. And I think I would approach it the same way and work through an example with my class. Like, let's play with it. Let's put some context in there and see what it generates, and then tear apart the result, just like you would in any other work setting. And he spoke so eloquently about it, but teaching kids to think critically and to innovate will be our jobs moving forward. Like, that is the work. And it's hard to predict, what the future will look like, but there will always be a need for innovation and critical thinking. So I think we're very fortunate. We have not had any issues with it here yet. It is currently blocked, as is all AI, but I think it's an important teaching and learning moment for our staff. We have talked about it at data governance already, and we talked about it at the policy committee already. I look forward to our tech plan kind of addressing some of these newer areas. Right now, it doesn't really speak to it, so we do have some edits to make in our tech plan, but embracing it from a curriculum point of view, certainly.
Like, having it blocked as a district, I think is a good idea for now, but maybe having a computer lab that allows it, having the kids play with it, that kind of thing, because the question is, where's the line, right?
Yep.
You can use spell check.
Right.
Would you allow kids to use Grammarly? I don't know.
Yeah.
I use Grammarly.
So right now it's blocked because it's AI, and that's a trigger for our firewall, but also I did my diligence with our data governance consortium. So we belong to the SDPC, which is a clearinghouse for all the products and software and all the websites that we use. And they currently have no agreements on file with anyone, not in New Hampshire, for ChatGPT. So I did ask them, if you could come out with a position on it, that would really help us to know how to embrace this moving forward.
Yeah,
they're struggling, I think, with it, to be honest.
I think everybody is, and I think even if you come out with something now, the next iterations are going to develop pretty quickly. They Wharton School of Business had ChatGPT take a test, and it passed a test at Wharton, which obviously is pretty good. Mm-hmm. But even like further iterations, they're talking about having it be able to create videos with graphics or AI where people are talking, like how fast this may be integrated. And like when you ask a kid to write a report or create with a PowerPoint, but if it's almost where they get the information from, it may be just as important as, like, and where ChatGPT or something else gets the information, maybe in discerning that may become just as important, if not more important, than the ability to get the information. But when I say I don't know, like, I have utterly no idea where we're going with this, but.
So I'll just, you say everybody's struggling with this. I can say, at least in my company and a number of seminars I participated in, we are embracing this. We have been. We've been using AI for a number of reasons for probably the last 5 years with what I do for work. And even recently, we have trainers that are saying, I've used this piece of AI and it saved me 3 hours of preparation, so now I can focus on the true content. So I think it is, and I was pleased to hear Mr. Power say, we're not going to put our heads in the sand, right? Because you can't. It's here. Just like Napster 20 years ago, right? People put their heads in the sand, right? But look, you've got all the music online and it's just so much better, right? So I think the more that we embrace it and say, how do we integrate it with our students? Because as soon as they leave and they're in the workforce, they're using it. I can tell you right now, this week, in 3 different presentations, somebody had a printout of what one of the AIs we've been talking about and another one that's coming out. And it was amazing. It enabled a lot of debate and discussions on those topics. But those researchers, the trainers, didn't have to go spend hours and hours and hours researching the topic. It was right there. They made modifications to it. It wasn't just like, here you go, this is what we're doing. Made modifications to it and presented it out in a more meaningful way. And they were less rushed. So it actually helped. So I'd say, challenge, our district and any other district, how do you embrace it and intertweet it? Because guess what? Yeah, it's not on their laptops that they get through the school. I guarantee it's on their phones. And I can even say I used it 3 weeks ago when my daughter had a question for me on homework, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't remember linear equations. Hey, ChatGPT, tell me about this linear, and I gave it the exact formula and everything. It spit out the answer with an explanation, more examples, more websites to go to for more information. I mean, it spit it all out there for that, and I thought that was amazing, not just for myself as a parent who felt really dumb at the moment, but also for students that when they're at home, they don't have that easy, quick resource to a teacher, but they have that easy, good resource that brings it, here's the answer, the explanation, and here's more reading material to go further on that. So there's a lot there for the students if we embrace it.
I want to just say we've talked about this at previous board meetings, but it's that rollover between being a consumer and like an informed producer.
Right.
And that's true with all the technologies. If we can get our kids to a place where they're producing, whether it be content, music, literacy, like literature, like writing, theater, that's where you want to be. But how we get them there is kind of important, rather than just consuming these tools, consuming them with a use for production and an expectation of maybe a presentation and preparation for a class debate or something. That's how it could be useful, yes.
Yeah, I think under the understanding, for example, like math, eventually kids are allowed to use calculators in class, but they have to work up to that point, or statistics, and they have to understand how statistics work. Talking with English teachers are either like, it'll never be as good as what humans can do, or it might already be, but having that at some point, that breaking point, we don't know where it is, but just to think about that. So,
bring on the Matrix.
No.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. So besides that one, is there any more discussion from the board for looking for a vote for moving this on to second reading?
So
all right. I'll make a motion to move these on to second reading. And then who's got the second?
Second.
Jason gets. All right. Any discussions? All right. All approved. Thank you. All right. Move on to board comments and correspondence.
we had the safety committee meeting today, and there was a lot of intelligent people talking about a lot of interesting and creative ways to problem solve stuff, and I thought it was awesome. I was really proud of the people that were in that room today.
Okay.
All set.
For me, town forum this past weekend with Mr. Giard. Really good. We had a number of people stop in, ask questions about the school specifically and the addition So it was good to have those discussions as well as talk to other leaders in the town as far as what their committees are doing. So there's a lot of information shared, so I was appreciative. And then I attended the winter chorus right before the last meeting we had, which was really good with the new chorus teacher, and the students did an amazing job in grades 5 to 8. So I appreciated being there.
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything either.
All right. Then we will move this on to the consent agenda.
All right, we'll start with the personnel report. Under retirement, we have 3 retirements of professional staff at the conclusion of the school year. We have Maureen Eaton, who is a Central School elementary school teacher, grade 3. It's worth noting that Mrs. Eaton has been with the district for 33 years. We also have Eileen LaCourse, HCS kindergarten teacher. She's been with the district for 25 years. Elaine. And then also Laura Hansen, HMS reading specialist, who's been with the district for 8 years. Those are 3 retirements. We also have, under nominations, we have 2 individuals for nominations for professional positions. One is Miss Lisa Lambert as the HCS kindergarten teacher. That's a 1-year assignment. And the second is Emma Merzick, who is being nominated as the Hampstead Middle School science teacher. I will entertain any questions folks may have in regards to either the retirements or the nominations.
I just had a question on retirements and hiring for next year. When do we start posting and opening up positions for next year?
So the deadline for the building administrators to post is February 1st for most positions.
Okay.
That is getting out somewhat early in comparison to what other districts do.
That's what Nashua has moved theirs back to February 1st because it's a race for everybody to try to get out first to try to get people.
Absolutely. Yeah, we recognize that it's going to be a very competitive hiring season.
And secondly, I'm very glad to see some of the new additions to our school. I think they'll be great.
So Mrs. Eaton had my children's uncle, and my second grader is going to be very disappointed when she finds out that she can't have Mrs. Eaton for 3rd grade. But congratulations to Mrs. Eaton.
We shouldn't talk about it too much because Dr. Cheney will start to get a little emotional. I know she's going to miss both of her teachers who are retiring immensely.
I am glad to say that I've been able to see the greatness of Mrs. LaCourse this year with my daughter. So she also had my now 20-year-old daughter as well. So quite the pair of teachers right there that have been in the district very long, and I'm very appreciative. So we'll be looking for a vote on retirements as well as nominations.
I would like to move to accept both the retirements and the nominations.
I'll second that.
Any other comments? Just again, thank you to the 3 that are retiring. Mrs. Eden, you've been here very, very long and really appreciate everything. And that's an understatement. So with regrets, I know I'll be voting to accept. And a thank you to Lisa Lambert and to Emma for stepping in to these roles. So, any other comments? And all approved? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dowd, who's going to talk about budget transfers.
In your packet, you'll have a memorandum from me, I hope probably toward the back of the packet. And so if you look at that memo, there are, I'll just say, quote-unquote, a bunch of different lines. But look at it as 3 different main transfers. The first one is the first 2 lines, next one are the next 2 lines, and then the third are all of the all of the preceding lines. So the first is in relation to sites. And I know Mr. Mackey just spoke about it, we have some funding shifting within the facilities department from the sites department to contracted services and repairs relating to some unexpected work at the HCS for backstop work, as well as the HMS generator, which exceeded what we would have normally budgeted for ordinary maintenance. We have, the second line is $40,000 from high school tuition to the security slash SRO services line. Those are additional costs now that we're able to get a full feel for what those costs are, because I received the first invoice from the updated MOU, which we updated, I feel like maybe a year ago or so. The last relates to a reallocation largely amongst the special education department, pulling some money from a high school tuition general education line, and then spreading it through, as well as from the special education line, special education residential cost of the 142 you see, that's coming from that account. We had budgeted for a placement which we didn't need, so we're reallocating those funds to services, to tuition to other LEAs, minor workshop and special education dues lines, and the big one is special education transportation, which is receiving $243,000. So that's that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
My question is, how does this impact, looking at our current budget, we're going to be looking to bring to the vote? I'm seeing that some of this is, greater than need than anticipated. Does this impact anything?
So what a great question to ask. So the majority of our transfers tonight are on the special education student services lines, which we had received significantly diligent budgeting efforts this year, if I can just put it that way. So we are increased, as you know, in that area, generally speaking, but I think it's better matched to what the needs will probably be. We're up, let's say, $125,000 over current year budget for special transportation. Tuitions are up $250,000, I think, overall. So we should be able to cover what we need. I'm a little bit concerned about the security SRO services line, just a little bit. I think we're going to be under. We have 75 budgeted there. You had asked about that, David, I believe at the time. And I said, let me just see how the billings are actually coming in. And we received the first half billing. And it's a little bit more than I had anticipated. So I think that's going to be a problem. But as we get into the budget cycle, next year's budget cycle, we'll be able to allocate to cover that, I'm sure.
Okay.
So, but the others should be covered. Special transportation, $125,000 is a lot less than what we're transferring here tonight in next year's budget, but we're also up against a situation this year where we really can't find transportation in certain cases, and we've had to seek alternative arrangements. And if those resolved and we could use one vendor, it might be more cost effective. And I know Jessica and her staff have been working very hard to try and accomplish that.
Okay.
So,
any other questions, board members? All right. Then I'll be looking for a vote. Looking for a motion here.
I'll make the motion to allow the budget transfers identified in the CFO's January 23rd, 2023 memo.
I'll second that. Any more discussion? All right, all approved? Okay.
Great. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Director of Student Services, Jess Parsons, who's going to talk a little bit about a newly formed partnership we have with Beacon Health.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Jess.
So, maybe 2 years ago, the DHHS came out with some practices that they wanted to start implementing across the state. And really that was in response to what they felt was a mental health crisis across the state and our lack of ability to respond to that. We have community agencies across the state, but staffing became an issue and responding to crises were also an issue. And so their response to that was to put out some mobile crisis units. And that started, I think, a little over 2 years ago, and they've been building capacity for that. I started to see it open up and be available last year on the Seacoast, and last week we were able to meet with David Hudson from Beacon Health Options to talk about how that response is happening here in the South Central region. And so Beacon operates what we call the New Hampshire Rapid Response Access Points on behalf of DHHS. So DHHS basically contracts out this service to Beacon Health Option, and what that does is it's a number, a crisis number that you can call, where you will get a person on a line that can help you talk you through the situation you're at, and ultimately. This is a great resource for schools because it can then trigger a response from a mobile crisis unit. And in the past, schools' response has been, we would call a parent, say that your child is in crisis, and we need some support with that, and we would have to call 911, an ambulance would come and respond. But that wasn't necessarily a clinical physician responding. That was EMTs or your local firefighters, whoever was kind of working the ambulance, and then they would then transport to the hospital, which was then an emergency room. And so what they found is that it's more helpful if you have a mobile crisis unit who has staff certified and sort of designated to work with people who are having potentially a mental health crisis. Now, if a call is made and that the person who responds or answers that call feels that it is an immediate emergency, they would call 911 and they would send police and fire and that type. But this response is a great way for us to, if a student is in crisis or if we're working with families and they're talking with us about challenges that they have at home, providing this resource to families. The number is 988 if anyone needs to access that. The other piece, if you go onto the website nh988.com, there's a ton of information around services and supports that they provide, and they talk you through sort of the process. David met with us just to talk about what the resources are and how they're partnering with schools and how we can use them as a resource because they are a mobile crisis unit. And their goal is really to help us kind of focus our response in a way that can best meet the needs of students and families. Any questions about that? So it's not a contracted service or anything like that. It's just a resource that we can access as a school, but also the community can access it as well. So again, the number is 988, and also you can go on to nh988.com and you can look at the resources there, and there's ways on that website you can also access supports.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess.
And Nicole's going to talk briefly about our RFP for our new website.
Hi again. So we recently met to review possible RFP bids for our new website. And at this point, we feel very comfortable with the different proposals. Many of them that came in were like over 60, 70 pages. So I really want to give a quick kudos to our tech department, Joe Dion, Michael Shaw, and Caesar Hilton really combed through all those details, made a beautiful crosswalk, and presented it to the leadership team. And we feel very comfortable at this point entering into an agreement with a product called Apogee. So this website will give us a lot of increased functionality. It'll be so much easier for community members to navigate and staff internally as well, and for us to be able to edit things on our end. The color schemes and layouts are beautiful. The integration with mobile devices is very slick, and they have a lot of messaging features that we can kind of coordinate our communication efforts so that our school messenger, what you currently get as a school messenger alert, can also be in sync with our social media updates. So we're excited about this new agreement. That's all.
It's important to note, too, that when we talk about a new website design, really what we're talking about is we go back to the strategic plan and that priority of improving communication. And, quite frankly, we've listened to the community, and, they have raised some concerns and questions about our website. So I think this is a step in the right direction for improving communication and also checking off an item on that strategic action plan that we've developed.
Can I just give one little, do you have a question?
I do. Please go ahead.
Mine's about something different, though.
Oh, okay. So what is the project plan? What does this look like? When do we start? When should we expect the big unveiling?
I should know those dates. Joe has them all laid out beautifully for us.
All
I
right.
don't know them off the top of my head. I know that we are going to be making a agreement with them relatively soon and beginning the work of migration over the spring, so that the new site is available before July, I believe is the target date.
Good. Thank you.
And Nicole, if you recall, there is a rather aggressive potential schedule. They're saying, looks like to actually go to launch, it's 9 to 10 weeks out from start. I think that's ambitious. I'd probably say
Yeah.
about 3 months.
Yeah.
So I think July 30th, or June 30th would be a
Yeah.
good date to have it up and running, if not before, so.
Yeah, having done website migrations in previous districts, I would not go with a 3-month window, even though they might, that's a very aggressive, particularly when you consider we have content that we need to consider before migrating. You know, it's not like we want to just take all of the old information, just put it on a new site. I really want to comb through what we have and upload only what's relevant. That takes time on our end, so I would think a July 1 target date would be more appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just wanted to give a quick plug for the Astronomy Society of New Hampshire came on site tonight. I don't know if you noticed the parking lot was a little bit busier than it usually is. So Lori Lynn Griffin, Martha Daniski, and Melissa Karpinski organized a wonderful event for our 5th graders and their families tonight. It's a sign-up in advance type of event, but the New Hampshire Astronomy Society came and set up in our soccer field probably 6 or 7 telescopes, and we shoveled out little spaces for them, and they did a really beautiful night sky outing. And they'll do another one on Monday night for 7th grade. So it's by sign-up, so please make sure if you have a 7th grader and you love stars, make sure you sign up on the little sign-up genius. But we're hoping for another dark sky, clear night on Monday. It's pretty awesome. They had one scope was focused on the moon, one was on Orion. The International Space Station went over right just before the board meeting started. So there's a lot of new astronomy fans after tonight. So I'm very grateful for all of them. They're all volunteers. And the cutest little thing happened. A kid said to one of the astronomers, "So, like, is this your day job? Like, what do you do all day long?" His answer was, "Well, today I thought about coming here all day." So they're so gracious with their time and their expertise, and they bring some amazing equipment, and it's just very admirable that they're even willing to share at all, because some of the equipment's very technical and expensive, but it was awesome.
Well, we appreciate all the hard work in getting kids outside, and even if it's late at night, stuff like this is awesome.
Yeah.
I remember in 7th grade, when I was in 7th grade, we did the same thing, and
So fun.
Still remember that, so it's cool you're giving that experience to the students.
Yeah, I have to give all the credit to Lori Lynn Griffin. She organized it all, has been doing it for a long time. So tonight, she had some helpers. Martha and Melissa Karpinski helped out too, so it was awesome.
Thank you to all 3 of them. All right.
And just a couple of other quick items. I know we're over time, but so last Tuesday on January 17th, Cole and I had the opportunity to present the HCS renovation plan to the library trustees. And I want to take the opportunity to thank the library trustees for their time. We had just such a wonderful conversation, and they gave us some really great feedback and some suggestions about sort of reaching the broader community beyond parents. And the time was absolutely invaluable. And we're neighbors by physical proximity, but that partnership is just it's really strong. Also, I just wanted to welcome everybody back after a nice 4-day weekend and shoveling out for the snow. And I just want to thank all the parents who have provided feedback over the last few days in regards to the snow days. I would also say that now that we've had 2 snow days, we will now transition to remote days. And we try to give our teachers and our students as much advance notice as possible, taking into account several factors, including is there a potential to lose electricity, and there are other factors as well. But just be aware that as we look towards more storms in the forecast, it would be our intention now to begin to look at remote days. Again, it's really nice to have that balance between the traditional snow day and the modern technology to have continuity of learning through the remote day. So with that, that's the superintendent's report. I'll entertain any questions that board members might have.
Any questions here? No? All right. We'll move on to other business, old business. I think we do have one other business, which is we had discussed as board members to move the meeting that's on February 14th to the 21st, as it is a unofficial national holiday for some. We want to make sure for those that have loved ones and dates and just time for romance, they get the night off. So I don't know, Melissa, do we need to take a vote to change that?
No, the board doesn't have to take a vote.
Okay, so as long as everybody's in agreement, we'll post for a change in the schedule. Good? All right. With that, we do not plan to go into non-public. We do have a non-meeting after, but we are adjourning at 9:10 on January 24th, 2023.